Hi everyone, I'm Michelle and welcome back to my meadow. Today it is time for another monthly garden tour, and this time it's a twofer because we are just done with hurricane/tropical storm Ian in our area, and I wanted to take you on the tour before I start the cleanup. We are very grateful that we have very little damage here, but I'll show you some of the things around the garden that were affected and just a few of the things that I did to help protect my plants. If you did not see the other videos, I did a whole series of hurricane prep for the garden. Feel free to go back and take a look at that. I won't go into that much detail here. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. So, why don't we head to the creek first? One of the biggest concerns that people had for us was this creek rising, but I was also concerned about some of these trees. And as we walk through, you can see some sticks down, but not particularly anything that is major. And because we did not get the amount of rain as predicted, which I'm really grateful for, the creek is only up just a little bit. Now, as the rain continues to travel north up through the intercoastal water system and through the St. Johns River, we may see this back creek fill up some more, but I don't expect that it is going to be any higher than the current banks. Out here in the meadow, we can see some limbs down. I do have one small tree here that is going to need to be taken down because I don't want it to fall into the creek, so I'll take care of that very, very soon. Back here along Orchard Row, everything fared very, very well. I only had one problem that I noted. This lime tree here got caught by the wind and the roots that were through and into the ground got popped up. And so at one point I looked over and it was tilted over like this. And it stayed suspended in the air that way. If there weren't a root in the ground, that would have blown over and possibly blown down and away. Almost all of these others have some kind of root in the ground, or they're very low or they're very sparse, and they just sort of whipped around. Now let's head over to the garden beds. Because of our location much further inland, when the storm passed by here, the winds were blowing in this direction, so north to south, and this is the north side of our garden. And if we zoom into the Thai eggplant here, we can see that it's definitely leaning north to south. So I will need to come back and do something about that. I didn't really think about this plant at all when I was walking around looking at securing things. And so I now have a better eye for paying attention to what I need to secure should we go through another storm like this again. We sort of had the same thing happen in this bed. The basil is leaned over and this piece is actually broken off. But the trellis looks great. Don't see any problems with that. The sweet potatoes look great. The tomatillos and cucumbers survived the storm just well, and in fact I see another cucumber down there. I love finding surprise cucumbers when I'm out walking around the garden. And it looks like we'll have a nice batch of tomatillos again really, really soon. Before the storms came through, I went around and collected all of the tomatoes that had any kind of a blush on them. I also collected eggplants and cucumbers because I did not want them to bust in the event that we had a lot of rain. I've cleaned out a lot of the beans since last time, and the sweet potatoes are beginning to show signs that it is time to start harvesting them. And my goal will be to harvest a small batch of sweet potatoes at a time as I need them. It takes about 2 weeks for them to be ready to eat after harvesting. So if I pick like 6 at a time, I can sort of stagger them in my pantry. Because I live in Florida, even in the coolest, darkest places, I can't seem to keep them for more than a couple of months. So I don't want to dig them all up at one time. And I have discovered that if I just leave them in the ground, they do just fine. They don't grow a whole lot bigger as it gets colder. And it's sort of like having my own root cellar literally underground. The fig tree is no worse for the wear. I think having a lot of the leaves being defoliated gave it a much better chance of survival. I don't see anything that broke off on that. And I still see a few more figs. Maybe you see this scare tape that I had in there. I put that in as an effort to sort of keep the birds out, but I think that mostly it keeps me paying attention because it snaps like that in the wind and I'm always turning around looking to see what's behind me. Over here, we secured the okra to the persimmon tree. I don't talk about persimmon tree much, and in fact, my wife said, why don't you ever show people the persimmon tree? So I'll get underneath there and show you all that as well. But I think that this did really well. Nothing snapped off at the top. We sort of secured them all together just to keep them from whipping around in the wind. Here is the persimmon tree, and boy, is it loaded with fruit this year. This is the 3rd year it's been in the ground, and we are finally seeing a nice amount of production. Last year, I think that we had about 8 fruits off of it, and I am looking at more than 25 right now. And if I peek down in there, I see at least one that's getting really ready to be picked. I would love to tell you that the Asian wing bean trellis survived all of this, but that would be a lie. As the winds started in on Tuesday, this whole side collapsed down. It's kind of hard to see, but I have a lot of beans on there too. So I'll have to make a decision about what I'm going to do. I'm not sure that there's going to be anything that I can do to make it sturdy again. The sweet potato and bean vines are making a nice little ground cover for me right now, which I'm grateful for. That was sort of the goal, to have that planted there, so I'm excited to see that. On the north wall, the few plants we had left fared okay. We did have the tomato blow over in the cage there, and I know that the other tomato blew down, but all in all, everything over here looks good, considering that this side was getting the brunt of the wind whipping through as the storm passed. Now, the funny thing about this side of the house this time of year is this bed gets hardly any sun at all because of the way the sun has shifted. In fact, that tomato right there, I have been watching for a while. It is nice and big, but it is not blushing, and I think it's because it's not getting any sun. So no matter what kind of garden you have, it's really good to know where the sun is throughout the year, and so you can do your proper planning. If I were going to plant in this garden this time of year, I would stick with some kinds of greens or things that don't need a whole lot of direct sunlight. As I shared in one of the other videos, the zinnia has seen better days, and so I cut back what I could. But no worries, what I didn't cut back, Ian took care of for me. So there's definitely some cleanup to do here and get this ready for something pretty for fall in the front of the house. The tabibua tree did just fine. I'm really pleased. It doesn't look like it had any damage from whipping around. It's still a small tree and it's nicely balanced. So that went really, really well. Now, it's a different story here on the south side because these were protected from all of the wind, and so they look as if there wasn't a storm at all. And if we take and turn and look at the bananas, they are definitely battered quite a bit, but primarily, if you can compare, they are battered sort of above the roof line mostly. The smaller plants, the ones that are down and inside, were well protected. And I will do a video when we prune this, just so you all can see how we prune the plants, because they're banana plants, not banana trees. The one thing that I did over here to help protect them is I took an old water hose, a little flat water hose, and I wrapped it around, and it's not super tight, but I just wanted to give some support. So as the wind blew and it went this way, the plants that were on this side could give some added support. I didn't know at the time which way the wind would blow, but I figured with wrapping it all the way around, I would give it some extra support. And I am happy to report that the bananas did not crash, and they are all still looking mighty, mighty lovely. And happy to report also that the okra that I tied together, that's it right there. It is doing well, and the tops did not snap off. The sweet potato and yam beds are continuing to thrive, and I can even see some longevity spinach starting to pop up out of the sweet potato bed. Our Asian long beans have something wrong with them. I'm not sure, but I'm betting I've got some kind of either a fungus or a virus, because all at once they are looking terrible. And so I am not sure if it's seasonality. They aren't that old, but I've not seen that before. If you all know what that might be on the beans, I would welcome a comment from you, please and thank you. The Cataly guava did just fine, and all of the fruit is gone from these now. So before winter comes, I am going to go ahead and prune these back so that they have a chance to really regrow and be a lot stronger and less spindly this next season. A number of people were concerned about the passion fruit trellis, and I am happy to report that it's 100% okay. I was not expecting any problems with it other than maybe the wind blowing the leaves. Because there's very little surface area for the wind to affect, I was pretty sure we were going to be a-okay there. And for everyone who had wondered about the compost bin, my little secure trick with the 2x4s, putting the blue garden beds inside, which you might be able to see in the cracks there, all worked perfectly. Thank you again, Lisa, for that suggestion. And here's another peek down Orchard Row. Everybody is looking great. I have citrus on. I see some things blushing. I'm excited to have some citrus this year out of the garden. If you didn't get a chance to watch any of the hurricane prep videos, then the way my patio looks right now might be a surprise to you. But we secured the green stalks, we secured the dragon fruit, and then sort of tied everything together to make little forts to keep as many things as possible from blowing around and blowing over. And even though the storm did not get heavy like it did in other places, I'm still grateful that we did this, because I would not have wanted to be out here in 70 and 80 mile-an-hour winds trying to secure them after the fact. So it was 100% worth the effort to be better safe than sorry. And when we put the green stalks against the house, I put my very tall dill on the house side of it, and that seemed to really help protect it. I thoroughly expected that this would have blown over and broken off, but I do think having it against the house like that gave it the support that it needed. The dragon fruit is looking great, though we did lose our most recent dragon fruit. It was not because of the storm. Something ate the middle of it as it started to grow. And so we're going to have to continue researching on what happens with the dragon fruit. The one other thing we did before the storm is we pruned all the really wild and woolly pieces that stick out, because we didn't want them to catch in the wind and then cause more of the plant to break. We have had one new addition to the garden since the last tour. Well, it's not new to the garden, but it is new to being in the ground. If you remember in the last garden tour, I showed you the moringa was tilted over, and when I pulled it, I actually broke the roots out. I have a video coming out about that, but I wanted to show you I transplanted it into the ground, and we are already seeing new growth on it after about 2 weeks. And since we're looking at this from the other side, where I cleaned up all those bean plants, I now have several dozen volunteer beans, which does not make me sad at all. So we have a whole nother batch of beans coming on for the fall and winter, and I did not have to plant them. They're all kind of hybrid, but I really don't care. They will be edible and lovely. In another video, I asked you all about suggestions for these IBC tote covers. And for this storm, I went ahead and made a decision. I made the decision to poke holes in the corner, and in doing so, the water from the overflow of the top drained out faster. And here we are just one day after the storm, and they are dry. So that was a great decision, just to poke the holes. I've decided that I am probably just going to have to replace these every year because they don't stay looking nice. Some of you suggested that I cover from the inside, and I may do that as well, but part of the idea of these covers for me was the aesthetic, because you can see them from the street, and maybe I'll figure out a way one day to make them even prettier from the street. Well, my friends, it is time for me to get to work cleaning up around this garden. If you liked this garden tour, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to know what else we're doing here in our little Northeast Florida Zone 9A garden, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, my friends, remember to drink plenty of water, wear a high quality sunscreen, and have a fantastic day.